Mark but this flea, and mark in this how little that which thou deniest me is. It sucked me first, and now sucks thee, and in this flea our two bloods mingled be. Thou knowest that this cannot be said a sin, nor shame, nor loss of maidenhead. Yet this enjoys before it woo, and pampered swells with one blood made of two. And this, alas, is more than we would do. It has been said that power is the shaping principle in Donne's verse. The power of argument or of persuasion, the power of God or of a king, or of a fiercely wooing lover. John Donne himself was ambitious, audacious, extreme. Later in his life, he made or tried to make a firm distinction between the young Jack Donne, a writer of lascivious verses and scurrilous satires, and the mature and devout Dr. Donne, Dean of St. Paul's, one of the great intellectual preachers. But Jack Donne and Dr. Donne are the same man, dramatic, immediate, playing in a deliberately exaggerated way with ideas and concepts, manipulating all the shock tactics of his rhetoric to persuade you with ingenuities. That poem, The Flea, for example, arguing its way through with the outrageous logic of a brilliant lawyer, hot-blooded and cold-blooded at the same time.
Mark but this flea, and mark in this how little that which thou deniest me is. It sucked me first, and now sucks thee, and in this flea our two bloods mingled be. Thou knowest that this cannot be said a sin, nor shame, nor loss of maidenhead, yet this enjoys before it woo, and pampered swells with one blood made of two. And this, alas, is more than we would do. Oh, stay, 3 lives in one flea spare, where we almost, yea, more than married are. This flea is you and I, and this our marriage bed and marriage temple is. Though parents grudge, and you, we are met and cloistered in these living walls of jet. Though use make you act to kill me, let not to that self-murder added be, and sacrilege, 3 sins in killing 3. Cruel and sudden, hast thou since purpled thy nail in blood of innocence? Wherein could this flea guilty be, except in that drop which it sucked from thee? Yet thou triumphst, and sayest that thou find'st not thyself nor me the weaker now. 'Tis true. Then learn how false fears be. Just so much honor, when thou yield'st to me, will waste, as this flea's death took life from thee.
The idea of a flea having commerce, as it were, between lovers wasn't an entirely original one. There are other contemporary poems on the subject, but no one made such an extraordinary performance of it as Donne. The way it opens is very characteristic of him. Mark but this flea. It's a direct, almost buttonholing tone of voice, putting you, the listener or reader, unwaveringly at the receiving end of a peremptory instruction. Listen, attend, the voice says. Or it vaults right into the middle of a situation with the presumed argument. I wonder, he says,
I wonder, by my troth, what thou and I did till we loved. Were we not weaned till then, but sucked on country pleasures childishly, or snorted we in the 7 sleepers' den? 'Twas so. But this, all pleasures, fancies be. If ever any beauty I did see, which I desired and got, 'twas but a dream of thee. And now, good morrow to our waking souls, which watch not one another out of fear. For love, all love of other sights controls, and makes one little room an everywhere. Let sea discoverers to new worlds have gone. Let maps to others worlds on worlds have shown. Let us possess one world. Each hath one and is one. My face in thine eye, thine in mine appears, and true plain hearts do in the faces rest. Where can we find two better hemispheres without sharp north, without declining west? Whatever dies was not mixed equally. If our two loves be one, or thou and I love so alike that none can slacken, none can die.
Astronomy, exploration, mythology, metalworking, Donne's images and metaphors draw on every kind of fact and experience. A century and a half later, Dr. Johnston was to call such almost excessive ingenuity metaphysical, thus giving a label to Donne and his followers that has lasted ever since. Everything is put to rhetorical use, even the sun in the sky, if need be, as here in his poem, The Sun Rising, when what is addressed isn't the loved one, but the sun itself.
Busy old fool, unruly sun, why dost thou thus through windows and through curtains call on us? Must to thy motions lovers' seasons run? Saucy pedantic wretch, go chide late schoolboys and sour apprentices. Go tell court huntsmen that the king will rise. Call country ants to harvest offices. Love, all alike, no season knows nor clime, nor hours, days, months, which are the rags of time. Thy beams so reverent and strong, why shouldst thou think I could eclipse and cloud them with a wink? But that I would not lose her sight so long. If her eyes have not blinded thine, look, and tomorrow late tell me whether both vindiers of spice and mine be where thou left'st them, or lie here with me. Ask for those kings whom thou saw'st yesterday, and thou shalt hear, all here in one bed lay. She is all states, and all princes I. Nothing else is. Princes do but play us. Compared to this, all honors mimic, all wealth alchemy. Thou, son, art half as happy as are we, in that the world's contracted thus. Thine age asks ease, and since thy duties be to warm the world, that's done by warming us. Shine here to us, and thou art everywhere. This bed thy center is, these walls thy sphere.
And there is drama in Donne. It's sometimes forgotten that Donne was just as much an Elizabethan as Shakespeare was. This was, of course, the greatest age of English drama. And in such a poem as The Apparition, Donne creates a drama in miniature, an imagined, part playful, part terrifying address to a young woman who has refused him.
When by thy scorn, O murderess, I am dead, and that thou think'st thee free from all solicitation from me, then shall my ghost come to thy bed, and thee, feigned vestal, in worse arms shall see. Then thy sick taper will begin to wink, and he whose thou art then, being tired before, will, if thou stir or pinch to wake him, think thou call'st for more, and in false sleep will from thee shrink. And then, poor aspen wretch, neglected thou, bathed in a cold quicksilver sweat, wilt lie, a verier ghost than I. What I will say, I will not tell thee now, lest that preserve thee. And since my love is spent, I had rather thou shouldst painfully repent, than by my threatenings rest still innocent.
That sense of the dramatic carries over into Donne's religious poems, the best known of which are the 19 commonly called the Holy Sonnets. It's not known precisely when they were composed. It has been argued that many of them may well have been written before his late ordination at the age of 42. They share the forceful voice of Donne's love poems.
Death, be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. For those whom thou think'st thou dost overthrow, die not, poor death, nor yet canst thou kill me. From rest and sleep, which but thy pictures be, much pleasure. Then from thee much more must flow. And soon is our best men with thee to go, rest of their bones and souls' delivery. Thou art slave to fate, chance, kings and desperate men, and dost with poison, war, and sickness dwell. And poppy or charms can make us sleep as well, and better than thy stroke. Why swell'st thou then? One short sleep past, we wake eternally, and death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die.
Even in the extremity of illness, with his mind as so often set on death and punishment, Donne couldn't resist his habitual ingenuity. 7 or 8 years before his own death, while seriously ill, he could still play on the sound of his own name, Donne, Donne. And on the similar chime between the sun in the sky and thy Son, God's Son, a hymn to God the Father.
Wilt thou forgive that sin where I begun, which was my sin, though it were done before? Wilt thou forgive that sin through which I run and do run still, though still I do deplore? When thou hast done, thou hast not done, for I have more. Wilt thou forgive that sin by which I have won others to sin, and made my sin their door? Wilt thou forgive that sin which I did shun a year or two, but wallowed in a score? When thou hast done, thou hast not done, for I have more. I have a sin of fear, that when I have spun my last thread, I shall perish on the shore. But swear by thyself that at my death thy sun shall shine as he shines now and heretofore. And having done that, thou hast done. I fear no more.
One of John Donne's patrons and admirers was an aristocratic lady called Magdalen Herbert. It's likely that Donne gave her manuscript copies of some of his poems, which weren't published until after his death in 1631. And if so, they were probably read by one of Magdalen Herbert's sons, George. Coming from a noble family, brought up to value intellectual attainments, apt and practiced in linguistic nimbleness, George Herbert was for much of his life ambitious for worldly success. And this ambition seemed within reach as public orator at Cambridge and man about court. But Herbert arrived at a point in his 30s when he realized that these ambitions were likely to come to nothing. And it was then that he took the unusual step for a man of such background and attainments of becoming a country parson, rector of a parish near Salisbury in Wiltshire. None of Herbert's mature poems, written in the last few years of his quite short life, he died at the age of 39, has other than a religious subject. Throughout, there's a plainness, a sincerity, and a homeliness that you could say seems to suggest a domesticated John Donne, as in the way Herbert tells a story about encountering Christ in his poem Redemption.
Having been tenant long to a rich lord, not thriving, I resolved to be bold, and make a suit unto him, to afford a new small rented lease, and cancel the old. In heaven at his manor I him sought. They told me there that he was lately gone about some land which he had dearly bought long since on earth to take possession. I straight returned, and knowing his great birth, sought him accordingly in great resorts, in cities, theatres, gardens, parks, and courts. At length I heard a ragged noise and mirth of thieves and murderers. There I him espied, who straight, "Your suit is granted," said, and died.
But there must have been a sense of strain at times in Herbert's choice of a religious vocation. And it's that strain, that sense of rebelliousness against discipline, which he handles so dramatically and with such an inevitable rhythm of movement towards peace in his poem, The Collar. It begins with all the passion and abrupt power of Donne.
I struck the board and cried, "No more, I will abroad. What shall I ever sigh and pine? My lines in life are free, free as the road, loose as the wind, as large as store. Shall I be still in suit? Have I no harvest but a thorn to let me blood, and not restore what I have lost with cordial fruit? Sure there was wine before my sighs did dry it. There was corn before my tears did drown it. Is the year only lost to me? Have I no bays to crown it? No flowers, no garlands gay? All blasted, all wasted? Not so, my heart, but there is fruit, and thou hast hands. Recover all thy sigh-blown age on double pleasures. Leave thy cold dispute of what is fit and not. Forsake thy cage, thy rope of sands, which petty thoughts have made, and made to thee good cable to enforce and draw and be thy law, while thou didst wink and wouldst not see. Away, take heed, I will abroad. Call in thy death's head there, tie up thy fears. He that forbears to suit and serve his need deserves his load. But as I raved and grew more fierce and wild at every word, methought I heard one calling, "Child," and I replied, "My Lord."
That dramatic simplicity of Herbert, in which plain domestic strength and plain storytelling are compressed into something full of rhythmical subtlety and delicacy, is also the note of what is probably his best-known poem, an anecdote and a dialogue called Love.
Love bade me welcome, yet my soul drew back, guilty of dust and sin. But quick-eyed love, observing me grow slack from my first entrance in, drew nearer to me, sweetly questioning if I lacked anything. "A guest," I answered, "worthy to be here." Love said, you shall be he. I, the unkind, ungrateful, ah, my dear, I cannot look on thee. Love took my hand, and smiling did reply, who made the eyes but I? Truth, Lord, but I have marred them. Let my shame go where it doth deserve. And know you not, says love, who bore the blame? My dear, then I will serve. You must sit down, says love, and taste my meat. So I did sit and eat.
Herbert's poems were written and he died not long before the English Civil War. Through that conflict, in the years leading up to it and in the aftermath of Cromwell's virtual dictatorship, poets took sides like anyone else. The followers of King Charles I, those who have been called the Cavalier poets, such as Lovelace, Suckling, and Carew, were often smooth and witty and formal. But such qualities aren't to be found just on one side. Andrew Marvell became a consistent opponent of the king, and he sat as Member of Parliament for Hull in one of Cromwell's last parliaments. Earlier on, he also worked as a civil servant, taking part in foreign negotiations and helping deal with foreign documents. In all this, and in his poetry, he had a sense of balance and fairness. In his lines addressed to Cromwell in the Horatian Ode, there's a real sympathy with the dignity of King Charles as he went to execution. He nothing common did or mean upon that memorable scene, but with his keener eye the axe's edge did try. Along with Marvell's balance and fairness goes his elegance. Most persuasively, in one of his love poems, a beautiful piece of argument which Donne would have approved of, to his coy mistress. Had we but world enough and time, this coyness lady were no crime. We would sit down and think which way to walk and pass our long love's day. Thou by the Indian Ganges' side shouldst rubies find. I by the tide of Humber would complain. I would love you 10 years before the flood, and you should, if you please, refuse till the conversion of the Jews. My vegetable love should grow vaster than empires and more slow. 100 years should go to praise thine eyes and on thy forehead gaze. 200 to adore each breast, but 30,000 to the rest. An age at least to every part, and the last age should show your hearts. For, lady, you deserve this state, nor would I love at lower rates. But at my back I always hear Time's winged chariot hurrying near, and yonder all before us lie deserts of vast eternity. Thy beauty shall no more be found, nor in thy marble vault shall sound my echoing song. Then worms shall try that long-preserved virginity, and your quaint honor turn to dust, and into ashes all my lust. The grave's a fine and private place, but none, I think, do there embrace. Now, therefore, while the youthful hue sits on thy skin like morning dew, and while thy willing soul transpires at every pore with instant fires, now let us sport us while we may. And now, like amorous birds of prey, rather at once our time devour than languish in his slow-chapped power. Let us roll all our strength and all our sweetness up into one ball, and tear our pleasures with rough strife thorough the iron gates of life. Thus, though we cannot make our sun stand still, yet we will make him run.